Hi, I'm Mason. We're going to talk through a closed loss program. So as far as pipeline, we were able to bring back 25% of our closed loss deals from 2 quarters back. So again, look at your existing pipeline, do 25%. Then you've got the exact number for us. That was like a ballpark of like 8 to 12 deals that were re-engaged on a quarterly basis. How long did it take to start seeing results? Generally, we would send a gift. So for quick context, we sent a popcorn tin to our closed loss deals with a note that said, hey, we're popping back in, wanted to see if now was a better time. Again, it was nuanced based on the closed loss reason, like that's the high level concept. So generally we would send popcorn tins and we would have meetings on the books about 2 weeks later. And then we had a bit of a follow-up sequence, and it would take a little bit longer for some people, but overall it's within about 2 to 3 weeks. As far as channels, it was direct mail and then email. So not super complicated channels. Tech and strategy, again, we were using Sendoso at that time because we were an agency partner of Sendoso. There's a lot of direct mail sending platforms, or you can be really scrappy with it like I am now, and I like send my own stuff and like just write the addresses. And also I write handwritten notes that go with all of my stuff that are personally from me on like embossed Mason Cosby stationery. So like it's a personal thing for that. So you don't have to have a sending platform. It's helpful for scale, but you're scrappy. And then email. So if you have an email address, you can do it. Yes, you can use different tools like Apollo or Ample Market, or there's a lot of data enrichment plus outbound sequencing, but like literally the USPS and an email is all you really need. How long did it take to implement? We had this idea the first time, like, I don't know, it was like a Thursday and we ran it the next week. Like it wasn't super hard. You just like have to know how to write an outbound sequence and like be a little bit kitschy. The hardest part was the creativity around the gift within a budget. So if you can nail that part, you're good to go. How many people did it take to implement? I did it myself. It was like me, when just like a really good HubSpot instance with list segmentation. So like not super hard. Granted, I will say we had an incredible RevOps person that like made a really clean database. So like if you have a really dirty database or a sales team that doesn't follow a solid process, that actually gives you good reasons around closed loss. That's not going to be as easy, but like good data, good sales team that follows the process, one person. How much money? Again, we sent roughly 30 to 40 popcorn tins that were $30 a piece. So we're talking 30 times 30 is $900 plus, actually in the context of Sendoso, shipping was included. So it was like $900 for the actual sends. And then obviously we had a sending platform. In that context, Sendoso was free for us because we were an agency. So like not a huge deal on that front. And again, we already had HubSpot. So it was sending out emails. And then lastly, who can implement this strategy? If you have deals that you have lost previously, you can implement this strategy.
If that resonates with you, listen along. Also, check out our other episodes. You're listening to TLDR, the B2B SaaS growth podcast brought to you by Spear Growth. The goal of the podcast is to enable you, our listeners, to generate an additional $100,000 in cumulative pipeline by May 2024. To do this, we bring people who have made a real impact in their companies. They cut through the fluff and dive deep into one tactic or strategy of theirs. I'm your host Ishan. Let's generate pipeline. Hey Mason, thank you so much for doing this. Just quick story. I think I saw you before you, or I saw a couple of posts of yours right before you were starting Scrappy ABM. And then when you finally did it, and then how transparent you were and a few things, I think I even sent a few posts and ideas to the team at Spear Growth. Hey, this looks really cool. This is really nice. And for some reason, your story about your hat really just stuck to my head. So yeah, like that's how I got to know about you. Thank you so much for doing this. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, super pumped to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Perfect. So just to get started, like in a line or two, could you just introduce yourself? I know there's a lot you've done, but very quickly, like how should we know you?
Yeah. So founder of a company called Scrappy ABM that is very dedicated to starting ABM programs for B2B companies. If you think about the crawl, walk, run space or crawl, walk, run approach for ABM, everybody loves to be in like the walk runs because it's more fun, but you can't walk or run until you've crawled. And we are, to my knowledge, the only service provider that is dedicated to the crawl space. So that's what we do. In the past 3 years, we generated about 4.5 million through just really scrappy programs that generated about a 15x ROI. So again, that's what we do. We help you get started.
Awesome, Mason. Like that was amazing. So getting right into it, the project that you mentioned about. So by the way, first of all, I love puns. So I'm a huge fan of this already. So can you just walk us through what were the, because you've outlined the entire thing, but could you also walk us through, and I also understand it can work for any company which is B2B, but could you walk us through the stages of it? Like, is there more to it than just, hey, we'll send it, right? But then what's the prep phase? Is there a sending? Is there, how do you collect emails? Can you just walk us through the entire process once? Yeah.
Yes, I mean, super early, you need a good sales team that's actually going to abide by your overall sales process. Because again, I alluded to it in the TLDR, but like this was a quick turnaround from an execution perspective because we had really solid data and we had really a pretty great sales team that actually very much so abided by our sales process. So whenever there was a close lost, it wasn't just okay, we move to close a loss, we move on. But we actually, for a lot of deals, would have a monthly post mortem like meeting as a team on the revenue side for why did we lose these deals. And again, we would then at that point actually identify, is this the kind of account that we would want to re-engage down the road at any point? And again, that was just a part of our monthly cadence as a revenue team. So those kinds of things make it easier to go run a closed loss program, because for a lot of companies, the first time they do it, they they look at a 2-year look back and they haven't had good data, so they don't know, should I reach out to this person? So you end up doing all this runaround internally because you're trying to think through, who do I go after? Because I'll be honest, like sometimes a closed loss was closed loss because we said we are not a good fit. We do not need to reach out to them. So again, closed lost, if you've not got the appropriate tracking in place for closed lost reasons and then explanations, it can become a place in which you go back to deals that you should not have gone back to. So, from a prep perspective, that's the biggest thing that I would think through as you're thinking about making this more of a repeatable program.
That was not obvious to me at all. Like, that is a very, very good insight. So you're basically saying, can you walk me through the implementation of this? Obviously, there's a cadence from the sales team. That is great. Do you have is that another stage in the, like, is it beyond SQL closed lost, and is there a second stage called closed loss re-engage later, or how do you set
Yeah,
that
and
up?
it's a great question, and I've seen it done a couple of different ways. Like, I worked in an organization in which they had 4 different closed loss buckets because that was how they wanted to think through their closed loss. So there was like closed loss, like we turned them down, do not re-engage. Closed loss, like we really actually wanted them. Closed loss delayed. That was their way of saying like we lost it, but they're going to come back in 6 months or whatever. And then there was like closed loss ghosted. So like that was how they did it. And again, you can actually create different closed loss programs based on ghost, based on delayed, based on not now or they turned you down. I'm a fan of clarity from a closed loss perspective. And I just feel like that then gets into this challenge of like, okay, there's just a lot of confusion within the sale. Like we just need a closed loss stage. And then within your closed loss stage, you can actually set up within your CRM as somebody moves a deal to closed lost, a form's going to pop up. Some sales teams will hate it until they see the value of why we do it, but it will require you put a closed loss reason. And I'm actually a fan of requiring like a type out why, like help us understand, not just like the drop down, because that is helpful, but a drop down is great for graphs and charts. It's not great for actually like improving your sales process. So again, understanding the qualitative information that is coming from the sales reps and hearing their perspective, it can either help you understand we need to improve our overall sales process, first of all, or second of all, may actually help your sales leaders identify areas of coaching for your sales team so you can overall improve your individuals plus the process. So like if you're thinking about how do I scale this up, having those gates in place is huge.
So one more question that I had around this, the still the prep phase, right? So let's say an average contract duration is a year, and that's very common in most B2B SaaS. So let's say you lost something to a competitor, or most probably to a competitor, depending on how much information you have, and then you're trying to re-engage them next quarter. So when should you, like, if you know it's a year at least, so when should you first do that? Yeah.
So I would not have a close loss standardly. So again, in the idea that we're on an annual contract, I would not re-engage them 3 months later. I usually look at it through a who are we re-engaging from 2 quarters back. So that's my standard approach because again, it's been 6 months. So hey, you've been in your new contract for 6 months. How are things going? And it's not a let's get right back into a sales conversation necessarily, depending on the context. It is a are things going well? Are you enjoying what's happening? If not, hey, would it make sense for us to start a conversation so that there may be actually some overlap in your contracts, unfortunately. But like if you've built a bunch of stuff in this for a year and it's not going well, you actually do need some, from a tech perspective, you need some level of overlap to transition data from one to the other. So again, even though they are on an annual contract, it may actually come down to the fact that they need a 2 month overlap period. So if you re-engage in 6 months, they would buy 4 months later. So that's from a tech perspective. From a services perspective, it like I do a lot of project work. That's like 60-day, 90-day projects. So again, if somebody doesn't move forward with me, because I often am not necessarily quote unquote losing to another agency. I'm very unique in what I do. I'm losing to in-house. So they're like, we want to try to build this in-house first. If it doesn't work, we'll come back to you. So for me, I have closed loss that I re-engage 45 days later because they've tried it. And what likely happens in most cases is they've made no progress because they know it's important, but it's not urgent for them. It's not a fire for them. So I come back, they're like, we have made no progress, or we tried it and it completely bombed, or we tried it and it worked. I'm like, awesome. What did you do? Can we talk? I'd love to hear what you're doing that's working. Because then my next service line after my initial program is a longer term project. So again, even in that context of if they were successful without me, I can help them take the next step in their ABM journey. So again, it's very contextual from a time frame perspective on the length of your agreement and the context of the contract.
That's, I think that's the strategy that you outlined sounds very simple. I think that's with a lot of the stuff that you do, but there's a lot of contextual knowledge that gets completely lost because, yeah, like I wanted to send out popcorn to people and then make a ton of money off that, but then that's not that's not the full story. So just on those lines, I have one more question. So let's say someone has gone through the entire sales process. They have shared their objections, and I'm assuming sales did a good job at countering those objections best they can, and they have taken a decision not to work with us for the offer that we were giving them, or for the service or the product that we were selling to them. So does it make more sense to then in the re-engagement try and offer something else, or is it just like, what would, like, have you seen any patterns around this, or in your case did you try to sell the same thing? Because you mentioned that in the conversation that you had, so you tried to have a conversation, and based on the conversation you decided what to sell. Is that the case, or what would you recommend?
Yeah, it's in that context, it is so dependent on the business. So again, if we're thinking about a tech provider, they they largely are selling the same platform. They may have different add-ons to their platform. So like a lot of the conversations I'm having are with people that have bought an ABM platform. So like they went and bought the intent side of an ABM platform. They didn't buy the ad side. They didn't buy the data enrichment side. So like again, I'm thinking through most tech companies are selling largely the same thing and the same offer. And if they're losing, they are losing either to not right now, they're losing to a competitor, or they're losing to we're going to try to duct tape this and band-aid this in house. Like again, there's companies I'm actually talking to right now that we're looking at doing a CRM implementation for them. The competitor to their CRM is not another CRM, it's an Excel spreadsheet, just because that's the nature of their business. So again, you may be able to go back with the same offer because they didn't actually solve the problem. It just wasn't painful enough at that point. Or they tried to solve the problem with a competitor and it didn't actually solve the problem and they need the same solution. So in that context, yeah, same thing. In maybe the context of a services based business, I'll give you some examples of things that I've experienced thus far. I had a client that said, we're not going to move forward right now. We're going to try to build this in house. And it was a 30-day project that was a single activation play. So we were going to come in and build an activation playbook for them. They tried to do it in house for about 45 days. I shot him an email and said, hey, I know we're supposed to reconnect at the end of the year, or sorry, at the end of the month. It's the first week of January. Just want to see if there's any context or anything new that's happened on your side. And he said, can we talk today? We hopped on a call that afternoon. And he said, we realized like this is going to be harder than we thought. It's not that it's complex. It's just, we don't have the playbooks built out. You guys have the playbooks built out. So we actually signed for a annual retainer, and we're going to build a playbook a month for him so that over the course of all of 2024, he'll have all of his playbooks built out for sales activation. So it wasn't the exact same offer, because the first offer was literally a 30 to 45 day project. We're now doing a 12 month project. The core difference is it's the same concept. It's a playbook activation play, just on a much longer time horizon. So that would be the nuance that I would provide is if time passes, context should change to some extent. So depending on the situation and what you're offering from a solution to a problem, that would then dictate what you would actually offer in that re-engagement conversation.
I love that answer so much. Thank you. So one question around this, right? So let's say you've understood these are the accounts you want to go after. I'm assuming, and I'll just paint a picture for you, which is very hilarious to me, but then just let me know. So like 1 week in a month, every month or every quarter, there's going to be someone sitting on a desk with a list of closed loss from the last quarter, with like pages and popcorn packets on their desk everywhere. And so like, and then like writing postcards and then taking everything to a mail and then sending it, and that's what they do for a week in their life.
Yeah.
Is that how you do it? Like how, what does that look like?
I mean, it's a great question. Like, again, I've got these beanies and I've got shirts, and I have 25 people that are my existing clients or in pipeline or are just kind of like fans of Scrappy ABM that have been like, I would love a shirt or a beanie. So like, I have taken this is way more information than you would want, but like early stage founder, it's like I've been getting up at like 5 or 5:30 and I'm writing these handwritten notes because I want people to actually know that this is a personal relationship. I don't recommend that for everybody. Like I own the business, so like I'm going to do a little bit more. But if you are an in-house individual, like, yeah, this is time consuming if you want to do it in a scrappy way. But the reason I always recommend starting here is like doing the math on your salary for a week versus the alternative, which is we're going to outsource this to an agency to do it. We're going to outsource this to a tech provider to do it for us. And both of those are going to be longer term projects for something we haven't validated in-house yet. So again, I'm a huge fan of in-house validation and then scaling through or outsourcing because of the time to other providers. But for me, I'm always a fan of prove model in-house to the best of your ability. So again, even if you're getting paid like $100,000 or $200,000 a year, like on an hourly basis, that's a ballpark of like 120 to 125. You take a week, and granted, I'm saying like this is like a CMO level person that's doing this at this point at 200 grand a year, which is not what most, like, this is going to be a marketing manager, for being honest. So like the amount of dollars that it would take to do this in a different way does not justify the investment of somebody just taking a week of their life to do it for the first time. Now, if you do it for the first time and you get like 8 deals that come back in a pipeline that close at like 25%, and you've now closed 2 deals that are like at 100K ACV, great. Like, you've proven the model, and next time it doesn't take you a week. You set it up from a tech perspective to where you can largely automate some of this, or again, not necessarily like buying the popcorn tins, sending the popcorn tins and writing handwritten notes. You can scale that through some of these sending platforms, but try to validate it in-house first.
I thank you so much. Like that helps me understand. You mentioned something, you might have answered this, but I want to re-ask this. So who does this? Because let's say I'm talking about enterprise style, like large sales teams, and I think you can then scale it back. So for in a large team, I'll paint a picture that let's say there are 5 sales teams for 5 different regions or 5 different products that is selling to. There are different account lists sent to different sales team that, hey Jason, you own this. Hey Mason, you own this. Hey Shan, you own that thing. So there's like different sales like lists that people have to look at now. And then there's a marketing team also that could potentially look at this. And then the third option is just interns that you get on a quarterly basis. So who does this? And if you, unless it's very highly contextual, what happens to um, giving sales folks their, there's a cut of the sale of a deal close, like what, how does that get affected?
All good questions. So I'm going to give you how we did it when I was in house, and I will then also give you the answer that is across the board. So for us, it was a partnership. So I, marketing, set up the content, I set up the actual outbound sequencing, I worked through identifying like how are we going to actually functionally do this. And again, at that point, we had a free Sendoso account. So again, we're talking about the idea of maybe doing this like popcorn tins around your desk. You may not have to do popcorn tins. You might be able to go to a website and you just like plug in people's addresses as you pay for it. That's another way of doing it. So I'm giving you that context to say it may not be, and I actually probably wouldn't recommend it be from a popcorn tin perspective. So an actually in office managing all the popcorn tins. I'm doing it because it's Scrappy ABM swag, but like for popcorn tins, probably not. So it's somebody owns that, somebody owns the content, and somebody sends it. That somebody that sends it will likely always be sales. The other two are kind of up for grabs to some extent, because like this is not super complex marketing strategy, and honestly, you don't necessarily even need a CRM. You need the ability to send something. You need the ability to send an email. That is not complex marketing. So like a lot of salespeople send their own gifts. This is just a gift. So a seller could completely own this process and they don't have to go get like executive buy-in. It's not a big deal. You just like do it yourself for your own deals. So there's that thought process. Again, if you wanted to do this as more of a program approach, even for the first time, validate it. So you get like a salesperson or two, at most three salespeople, and a marketer that works with those three salespeople to re-engage those lost deals. They then climb the leaderboard and people are like, what did you do? And you're like, sending popcorn tins to my closed lost deals. And then they're like, this is amazing. And then you scale it across the organization and you have then the buy-in and the ability to actually invest in scaling it up. So I hate the phrase, don't boil the ocean, but this is that. Like it is very, very simple in execution. Like you just need a couple of people that will do it with you, and you need to try it a couple of times.
No, I love that. Um, so I think this is more of a straightforward question. So what do you write on the note? Because
Yeah.
you've been sending things. What do you write? I have no idea what I would write. I have something that we are doing on our own, but I haven't heard what, because people always talk about this. No one tells you what's on the note.
Yeah. Great question. Again, it's even not necessarily the price of the gift, because a lot of people think, oh, if I send a more expensive gift, that I'll see a better response rate. It is the note and the creativity that goes into the note. So again, I think I've shared the example of we sent popcorn tins. We said, hey, we're popping back in. I just sent cookies to all of my clients, and I just said, hey, thank you so much for being an early client and having trust in Scrappy ABM. I think you've seen some sweet results, and we wanted to say it's sweet of you that you trust us, like something kitschy like that. So it doesn't need to be overly complicated, but I would try to be a little bit punny, a little bit cute. Another prime example from Will Aiken when he was in sales, and this is one of my favorite examples that he did as a one-to-one send, fully as a seller. He had a main point of contact leave. The deal got closed, lost. They got a new point of contact because the person was hired, and he kept trying to re-engage the deal, and she just wouldn't respond to any of his emails. So he sent her a coconut and said, "You're a tough nut to crack." And she took the call. Like, so you don't have to be really expensive. The note needs to be contextual to the gift and contextual to the recipient.
As you can say by the laughs, Um, I love puns. I love them way too much. This is amazing. So, just I think one thing that someone told me about gifting is you have to be very careful about what you send. It shouldn't ever come off as a bribe to anyone. Like if anyone looks at it and you can say, "Hey, that could be a bribe," don't send it. So, no phones and stuff is what someone told me. Is that true? Because I think there are some countries where that's a law. There are some companies where you're against that. So, is that something that you have to be careful with?
Definitely. I primarily work in the marketing industry and the tech space is where most of my clients live. Um, and from the gifting perspective, it's like the wild, wild west. You can do whatever. Nobody really cares. Um, the medical industry is way, way more intense. Um, you cannot send a gift that is more than $25 directly to a doctor because at that point, I think it's deemed a bribe, which is why you see so many people in the medical space doing dinners because you can do a dinner, you can treat them, but they aren't directly getting a gift. So this is something I heard from Leslie Barrett a few years back. Leslie Barrett uh, used to work at Sendoso. She was over all their customer marketing. She's super, super smart when it comes to direct mail and sending. She said there was this campaign that they saw one of their clients do that was in a highly regulated industry. So they invested the dollars into the packaging. So they sent a beer stein that said, "Have a beer with an engineer." And then the packaging was really high quality. And when you opened it, it actually had a video screen with a video from the direct sales rep to the recipient with a personal message. So none of that would be deemed a gift. The gift was the beer stein that cost $20. So it's under the threshold. So again, as you're thinking through the industries, you can get really creative with it. But I also think for a lot of people starting out, I'm just going to give a quick plug to one of my partners, Grove Cookies. Um, they will do branded sends, and this is primarily US and Canada, but they'll do branded sends for like $20 a send. So again, you don't have to get really expensive. That includes a little note card. Um, but it is something to be cognizant of. Like there are industries in which you can't send a $200 Amazon gift card. So just know your industry, and if you need to be cognizant of that, but you have the budget to spend on gifting, invest in the packaging to create a great opening and packaging experience more so than the gift itself.
Love that. That I again couldn't have ever thought of. Make the packaging expensive, right? Or spend on that if you have the budget. Perfect. So let's just, I think one of the last few questions on this. Let's run through the costs of an average program. And I know since like it can scale variably, so if I think it might be easier to discuss cost per reactivation and then just sort of look at okay how many cents cost per send, everything like just let's just do the entire cost across platforms and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, if you want to go the least expensive route possible, I actually really do highly, highly recommend specifically Grove Cookies. I partnered with them specifically because you can do branded note sends and send like a box of 6 cookies. And again, you can tie the note into the gift. And again, if you're going to send a gift with no note, I wouldn't send the gift because the note is what actually makes it drive a deal forward. Otherwise, it's just like, oh, this was nice. Um, so like Grove Cookies can do it for like $20 per send. And again, you just have to put in their email, or you just have to put in their email address even. And like it will do everything for you on that front. And then you'll get a notification when it's been delivered and you can follow up with an outbound sequence from there. So again, if you have the ability to do outbound sequencing, you can do that in HubSpot. If you don't have that, you can do that for free in Apollo. So again, you can take the person's email, enroll them into an outbound sequence in Apollo that's free, and it will do multiple outbound emails. If you want to get LinkedIn outbound as well, I highly recommend a tool called Ample Market that's data enrichment plus LinkedIn. It's relatively inexpensive in the grand scheme of things. So again, that's the low end is you can do it at $20 a send plus a free outbound sequence through Apollo. If you want to take it a step up and have more automation and more tasks that are associated, you can use a tool called Ample Market that helps you kind of further engage the account after the send has been sent. But it truly just comes down to how much money am I putting into the gift? how many am I sending? And what is the technology that I'm using to send it? The average gifting platform is probably $30,000 to $40,000 on an annualized basis. So again, I don't recommend starting there for your first round. But if you start seeing that you're doing this every single quarter and you have enough scale within your organization that you're supporting this across 10, 15 sellers, it's probably worth the 30 to 40 grand.
So let's take the $20 a send model and just like, let's just do a full cost of per activation. How many do you send to get one activation on average? Obviously, it's going to vary quite a bit, but yeah, still.
Yeah, I mean, these people are already brand aware. They've already explored your products and services previously, and they said no for a reason. So you have that reason. And if you're re-engaging in the appropriate timing based on the reason that they provided, I would expect somewhere in the ballpark of 20 to 30% that re-engage in a conversation. Because again, they already know who you already explored it. Unless your sales rep was just awful in the sales process, it was just mean and rude, they shouldn't hate your organization. They just said like, this wasn't the right fit at this time. So now you just re-engage, and you should get 25% that say like, you know what, you're right. This is a better time to have this conversation.
Love that. Okay, so 20 to 30. You said 20% would re-engage. So that means every 5 cents, which is $100, you get one more conversation. And I'm assuming out of this conversation, if I had to force a number out of you, what do you think? Like, what percentage could we aim to actually get into a sales conversation from that, or anything?
Oh, I was saying 20% would actually engage into the initial sales conversation, not a response. Your response on a gift should be like over 50 or 60%.
Understood. No, that helps a lot. I think, is there anything that I should have asked but I didn't? Well, I went in deep.
No, the only thing I can think of is just, again, the meetings that actually convert to revenue. For any programs like this, I just like to hold our conversion metrics the same. So again, as you're doing it for the first time, just hold your conversion metrics as they currently are. So if you anticipate that after your first conversation, generally 50% move to a deeper dive discovery, I would anticipate that 50% of those initial conversations would move to a deeper dive discovery. So if you just continue with your existing conversion metrics, you can then actually identify, we would need to send X number of gifts to X number of accounts to get their actual return on investment. And it was going to take this long to see that return actually happen.
Love that. Perfect. Okay. And then just last thing, Mason, like if you had to pitch Scrappy ABM to anyone, can you give us a quick elevator pitch?
Listen back to this episode. We build these kinds of starter programs because essentially what we just outlined is this is an account-based program that uses direct mail and email. It's a very simple ABM program that gets you running in the right reps of working with marketing and sales as a combined effort. So we do this, but we've got like 20 playbooks that are similar to this that are across a variety of different stages. And this is just one of our service lines. This is what we would refer to as a sales activation play. And then we move up into a pilot ABM program. So again, if this is of interest and you're like, this sounds super helpful, I recommend you start trying it in-house. If you run into trouble, that's where we come in and help make sure you have the right foundation.
Love it. Thank you so much for doing this, Mason. I learned a lot. I might actually do this, and I just hope this does not blow up. Otherwise, everyone will be getting popcorns in the B2B space like every month. Like that'd be weird.
If we start seeing, I gotta invest in popcorn companies now. I'm gonna go up and to the right.
Thank you for listening to the TLDR podcast. In case you're wondering, Spear Growth is a marketing agency. We help B2B SaaS companies like yourself with ads and SEO. Check out our website at speargrowth.com. That is SPEARGROWTH.com. Just like this, every episode starts with a 1-minute summary of what we discuss. Pick the next episode to listen to based on what you can implement right away. And after you implement any of these tactics and see an impact, we'd appreciate you drop us a note on podcast@speargrowth.com.